So the two sides are now completely polarized in the United States, and this wrinkles everyone through the 1850s, right? There's a balance of power between the free states versus the slave states, but it can't last. One will win, one will lose. It just can't stay balanced. Two sides are balanced in their belief, free versus slave, right? So the question, the polarize of the question of whether slavery should be permitted to expand, not whether it can exist, right? They're not saying, oh, slavery needs to go away. They're arguing about whether or not slavery should expand or not. And it comes to a crisis point when California asks to join the nation, right? Now, California is settled by northern white men, right? This is, remember, it's populated by men searching for gold in 1849, and they don't want competition from slaves, right? So they have a popular referendum, and they ask to be made into the Union as a free state, right? Now, the California Constitution is very Republican, right? They create a constitution that's representative of free soil ideology. And they don't give any African Americans who are there, they don't give them the right to vote, right? This is supported by the North, but it's opposed by the South, right? And you can see that California, right, it doesn't fit that parallel, right? It's half above the Missouri Compromise line, and it's half below. Right? So where's the compromise? Well, compromise comes up in 1850, and it's proposed by Henry Clay as another compromise to avoid disunion. It works, but neither side is very happy with the solution, and it sort of continues with the arguments, right? So Clay suggests, and this is what the Compromise of 1850 does, Clay suggests that California comes into the Union as a free state, right? But New Mexico and Utah territories, when they come in, they can decide whether they want to be free or slave. Texas gets money to pay off their debt to Mexico, and then slavery is abolished in the D.C. area. And one last part of the Compromise of 1850 is the Fugitive Slave Law. This is a law, or that becomes law in 1850, that runaway slaves have to be returned to their masters. Now, that's not new. There's always been a fugitive slave law on the books. But this new fugitive slave law says that instead of a jury determining whether or not an African American was in fact a runaway slave or someone who was free, the new slave law says that there's no jury, right? There's a low-level judge who determines whether or not a particular African American is a slave or free, right? Now, the accused fugitive, right, so this African American that got picked up by a slave catcher, was not allowed to testify. Only their masters could testify, or the white person who's claiming that this African American is their slave. Only they could testify. The judge receives $10 if they rule in favor of the white master, and he only receives $5 if he rules in favor of the fugitive. The result is that this creates an open season on blacks in the North, right? So here's a broadside that reflects some of the anxiety about this, right? It says, caution, colored people of Boston, one and all, you are hereby respectfully cautioned and advised to avoid conversing with the watchmen and police officers of Boston, right? This is in Massachusetts, this is far north. For since the recent order of the mayor and aldermen, they are empowered to act as kidnappers and slave catchers, and they've already been actually employed in kidnapping, catching, and keeping slaves. Therefore, if you value your liberty and the welfare of the fugitives among you, shun them in every possible manner, as so many hounds on the track of the most unfortunate of your race. Keep a sharp lookout for kidnappers and a top eye open, right? This is in April of 1851. So this really puts a lot of African Americans and Northerners on guard, right? This seems like an attack on free blacks. But it satisfies the South and it allows California to come in as free. This is Ralph Waldo Emerson's perspective on the fugitive slave law. He says, I said I had never in my life up to this time suffered from the slave institution. Slavery in Virginia or Carolina was like slavery in Africa or the Fijis for me. The new bill required me to hunt slaves, and I found citizens of Massachusetts willing to act as judges and captors. Moreover, it discloses the secret of the new times. The slavery was no longer mendicant, but was becoming aggressive and dangerous. The way in which the country was dragged to consensus, and the disastrous defection of the men of letters of the colleges or educated men, nay, of some preachers of religion, was the darkest passage in this history. It showed that our prosperity had hurt us, and that we could not be shocked by crime. It showed that the old religion and the sense of the right had faded and gone out, that while we reckoned ourselves a highly cultivated nation, our bellies had run away with our brains, and the principles of culture and progress did not exist. Slavery is disheartening, but nature is not so helpless, but it can rid itself at last of every wrong. But the spasms of nature are centuries and ages, and will tax the faith of short-lived men. Slowly, slowly the avenger comes, but comes surely. The proverbs of the nations affirm these slaves, but affirm they arrive. They say, God may consent, but not forever. What Emerson is saying here, he's saying, we are going to be punished for this, right? This is a crime against nature, and that the dark days are going to come upon us, right? God is going to punish both the North and the South for allowing this travesty to continue. Now, the northern states try to nullify this law by passing personal liberty laws to say we don't have to abide by this, right? The South is not happy. They feel jibbed by these personal liberty laws, this sort of process of nullification, and the North, of course, is not happy with the South.